Hi, I'm Chris Johnson of Creation Liberty Evangelism, and this is part one of Seminar 1 about how evolution is a religion and not part of science. Well, first off, I want to give my four-point position about where I stand, what I believe. Sometimes you hear a speaker and they'll talk for an hour, and you really, at the end of it, don't know what they believe, or you have to guess at it. I want to tell you exactly where we stand. Number one, the Bible is the inspired, infallible Word of the living God. Number two, the world was created roughly 6,000 years ago in 6 literal 24-hour days, just like we experience today. Number three, Jesus Christ died on the cross to save me from my sinful flesh. He rose from the dead. He's alive forevermore. And number four, evolution is one of the dumbest and most dangerous religions in the history of mankind. And again, our ministry name is Creation Liberty Evangelism, and you can visit us at creationliberty.com. This is not my wife. This is just a picture of her riding a chicken. And I couldn't do half the things I do in this ministry without her help, and we've been married for over 3 years, and she's been helping me with that ever since. So now, before I begin on when I say evolution is a religion and not part of science, I want to define a few terms so we all understand each other, where we're coming from. Science, for the past few hundred years, has been defined as systematic knowledge of the physical world gained through observation and experimentation. So, for example, we have no observation and no experimentation that horses come from something non-horse, or that horses can produce something non-horse. All the past few thousand years, all the experiments have shown us horses produce horses. That is part of science. Now, a religion is a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, or a belief in a supernatural power. So let's analyze this word supernatural. Nature is the material world surrounding mankind. So when you go outside, you see the birds, you see the trees, the sky, the rocks, all that is part of nature. Now, if you put the prefix super in front of a word, it means above or beyond. So when you say superman, it means above or beyond man. And supernature or supernatural is above or beyond what is natural, unexplainable by natural law, to go beyond natural forces. Now, Christians and evolutionists, they don't have any argumentation over this image right here. This is a horse and a zebra. They can mate and bring forth offspring. That's because they're the same kind. They mated and brought forth a zorse. That happens. That's part of nature. That's part of experimental, observable. That's part of science. So again, Christians and evolutionists, no problem with this. But here's where we differ. This is something the evolutionist believes, but the Christian does not believe. The evolutionist believes that horses and bananas both shared a common ancestor that came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago. This is what we call supernatural. This is unexplainable by natural law and goes beyond natural forces. We have no observable or any experiments to show how this could possibly happen. It is classified as a religion because, remember, a religion is a belief in a supernatural power. Evolution, by its basic definition, is a religion. Now, I want to give you the biblical history versus the evolution model. Okay, so you can see the difference between the two. The biblical history starts out and says that roughly 6,000 years ago, God created everything. Now, where do I get the number 6,000 from? Well, if you go into Genesis 5, and I'm sorry to say this about the Bible, but Genesis 5 can be a really boring chapter. I mean, you have Adam, he lived 130 years, begat a son, called his name Seth, and then Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos, and Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaan. And over verse after verse, you have he begat and begat this person. Everybody's begatting each other. And it's really kind of boring unless you map it out on a chart. Now, when you map this out on a chart, it's really interesting. Because Adam would have lived long enough to know Noah's father, Lamech. And Lamech could go to Adam and ask him about the time in the Garden of Eden when the first woman ate the first man of house and home. Then, Lamech's grandson Shem, who went through the flood, could tell the story of the flood personally to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The evolutionists will say, well, these mythical stories in the Bible, they just had to go through thousands and thousands of generations. No, the true story of the Bible only had to go through about 2 generations. Because if there's any discrepancy in the story, you can go back and ask the guy who was there. You had eyewitness accounts. Jacob said to Pharaoh in Genesis 47, he says, I'm 130 years old. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers. So he says, if you think I'm 130 years, but if you think I'm old, you should see my fathers, who are much older than me. So, biblical history says about 6,000 years ago God created everything. Then 4,400 years ago, there was a worldwide flood that destroyed everything. God saved Noah and his family, that's 8 people, onto a boat, and 2 of each kind and 7 of some kinds, all the animals, only whose nostrils in the breath of life and all that. We'll actually go over that more on seminar number 3 when we talk about dinosaurs in the Bible. Then, about 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ died for the sins of man, and here we are today, waiting for him to come back in about 20 minutes. Then we have the evolution model. Now, the evolution model starts off saying 15 billion years ago, and by the way, this number jumps all over the scale. Some say 13, some say 18, some say 15, some say 20. It jumps everywhere, but we're going to average it out and say around 15 billion years ago, there was a Big Bang. Then 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth cooled down. 3 billion years ago, the first life forms appeared. 3 million years ago, man appeared, and here we are today, waiting to get recycled into an earthworm or a plant. Now, just to put this into perspective, if I were to make the creation time scale, just like I showed you right here, if I took this and made this for every 1,000 years was equal to 1 foot on my scale, this one would come out to be about 6 feet long. If I made the evolution model at that same scale, it would come out to stretch across almost the entire United States. The average person has no real good appreciation for how long they say the age of this universe is. So what is evolution? How do we define evolution in all this? Well, we've already defined evolution as part of a religion, but I want to define it not just from a dictionary perspective, because evolution has lots of different meanings. I'm going to go into a textbook perspective, what they teach in elementary, high school, college level textbooks. What is the story of evolution being taught? And I'll give you 6 basic definitions of this. Now, the first definition is cosmic evolution. This is the origin of time, space, and matter. This textbook says that the Big Bang Theory states the universe began to expand with an explosion of concentrated matter and energy and has been expanding ever since, just like this image of propaganda they're showing in the textbook. You know, all the galaxies formed, that's how they got there. This textbook goes into a little bit more detail. It says, most astronomers believe, stop right there. This is a logical fallacy called ad populum. Majority opinion is not how we determine truth, okay? And I don't even know if most astronomers believe that. They don't give any information where they got their polling from. But somebody just, blanket, vague statement out there said, most astronomers believe this, so kids, you should believe it too. That is a logical fallacy. And we'll cover more on that in a minute. But most astronomers believe that about 18 to 20 billion years ago, which is a very long time, all the matter in the universe, well, that's a lot of stuff, was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. That is a crowded dot. Then for some unknown reason, and they call this science and put it in a science textbook, for some unknown reason, this region exploded. This explosion is called the Big Bang. You see, they cut down a tree to print that. Where's Al Gore when you need him? That's what I want to know. Then we have the second definition, because we just started with time, space, and matter. Then we have stellar evolution. Where did all the stars come from? You see, this textbook, and I have to pause here for a moment to say that many evolutionists that I have spoken with over the years we've been doing ministry have tried to say that, well, Big Bang and the stellar evolution and all that you're covering, that's not part of evolution. It just has to do with living things. Well, when they stop teaching it in the textbook, I'll stop talking about it. But for now, this is exactly what's being taught. Watch what this textbook says. If you are like most people, you may think of evolution as something that deals with just changes in living things. Isn't that what I just said the evolutionists are typically saying? That's the kind of emails I get. But this says, the definition of evolution, however, can be thought of in simple terms as change over time. Using that definition, many things can be considered to evolve. Now, evolutionists, if this is not really part of evolution, then join me in getting this junk, this propaganda, out of the textbooks, because it should not be taught as part of science. Now, this textbook is teaching about the formation of the solar system. Where do we get our sun from? Well, it says there's this big cloud of gas, and then this nebula, it shrank and it spun faster and faster, and poof, we got a sun. That's what they're teaching. Now, it's been estimated that every person alive today, that's about 6 billion people, could own 11 trillion stars to yourself. Those are just the ones we know about. We don't know about the ones that we don't know about yet. But Stephen Hawking said stars are so far away that they just appear to us to be pinpoints of light. We can't see their size or shape. He says, for the vast majority of stars, there is only one characteristic feature we can observe, the color of their light. So they look out into space and they see a dot of light. That's it. They'll even take a telescope, they'll stare into a black spot in space, and they'll see this black spot suddenly get brighter. They'll stare at it for a long time and suddenly this little bright spot appears and they go, oh, look, a star's forming, it's a brand new star. Well, it could be the dust is clearing and you're seeing a star that was behind it that you didn't know was there. No one has ever proven the formation of a star. Even many creationist ministries and Christian creationist ministries, they're teaching the stars are like our sun, and the sun is a star. But no one knows that for sure. That's never been proven, because all we can see is a dot of light. I'm not saying that the stars are not like the sun, and vice versa, but no one has ever proven this. But what we have seen are stars blow up. And it's called a nova or a supernova if it's a really big one. Now I read about this evolutionist professor who was writing, and he says if you could get 20 stars next to each other to explode, it could produce enough energy to make a new star. So you've got to lose 20 to gain 1. That doesn't tell us how they got there, number one, okay? And number two, there's a losing proposition in here. The guy ought to run for Congress and help us borrow our way out of debt, right? That's going to get us out of debt. So this universe today says a star formed out of a cloud of cool, dense molecular gas. So they said there's this cloud of gas and that's what a star forms out of. In order for it to become a potential star, the cloud needs to collapse and increase in density. But you see, basic physics would say this is impossible. Okay? If you have a bunch of molecules, okay, these molecules are always moving. Even in a solid object, you have molecules, little tiny microscopic molecules that are moving all over the place. Well, if you have a cloud of gas out here, as the molecules are moving around and bouncing around, as they get closer together, they increase in heat. Because of all the movement and the energy, it creates kinetic energy and increases in heat. As it increases the heat, the pressure increases, as Boyle's gas law will tell us, and the pressure drives them apart again. There's no even way, in a physical way, that we can conceive of how what they're explaining here could possibly happen in nature. That's purely imagination. To explain it, if you don't still understand, to explain it this way, let's say you blow up a balloon, and you have a bunch of gas in the balloon, okay? All the gases are trapped inside the balloon. Now, pop the balloon, and the question is, do all those gases stay right here in this consolidated area? Or do all the gases condense together into a smaller area? No. What happens? All the gases escape. They go out in every which direction. They go to the path of least resistance, not to the path of most resistance. And that's the problem that, this star theory has from the evolutionist perspective. It can't happen according to the laws of physics. They have to throw out the laws of physics to put it into a textbook. The third definition is chemical evolution. This is the origin of the elements. I have never heard an evolutionist in a live debate even address this topic. They will not talk about it at all. Because if the Big Bang may produce some hydrogen and some helium, how do we get all these other elements? Are you expecting me to believe that hydrogen evolved into uranium? How would that even be possible? And they said, well, you can fuse them in stars. Yeah, but the problem is all experiments have shown us that you can't get past iron with fusion. Well, if you can't get past iron, how do we get all these other elements? And then, if you want to say that the stars made the chemicals, remember that the star is made of chemicals. So this creates a chicken and egg problem. Which came first? The chemicals to make the stars or the stars to make the chemicals? It's a real serious chicken and egg problem. I've never even heard them address this one before. Then you have what's called a biogenesis evolution. Don't panic, I know it's a big word, but evolutionists love to create big fancy words to make their fairy tale sound more professional. This just means the origin of life, okay? This is a first grade science textbook that says Earth has changed much since its formation 4.5 billion years ago. Of course, the kids can barely read yet, but they're already being taught and being indoctrinated that the Earth is billions of years old because they have to get them while they're young. This teacher's edition science textbook said, stress to them that the Earth is thought to be at least 4.5 billion years old. Make sure the kids believe this before they leave your class. Now I praise God for all the good, godly teachers in the public school system. There are some good teachers in the public school system. I am not condemning everyone, okay? But there are some teachers that know full well that this is a religious worldview, and they're trying to push it on the kids, and we need to get this junk out of our classrooms and public school systems, okay? Now, this is a college textbook I was sent by a friend of ours that is used in Indiana right now. This section is called The Fact of Evolution. Now again, that big long word of biogenesis, I have evolutionists write me all the time and tell me abiogenesis is not part of evolution. The origin of life, it's only after life gets here. Watch what this textbook says. This is a college-level textbook that says, Earth started out as a hot, lifeless ball of molten rock. The first rocks were formed when the planet cooled, then water filled the ocean basins, then the first living cell came from lifeless chemical compounds from rock. This ongoing process of change is called evolution. Evolutionists, listen up. If this is not part of evolution, then join me. You guys should be on my side. Join me in getting this propaganda out of our textbooks, because this does not need to be in a science textbook at all. 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth cooled down and formed a rocky crust. This is what all the textbooks are teaching. As Earth formed, Earth's surface was hot, and there were large pools of bubbling lava. Oceans formed as it rained on the rocks for millions of years, and millions of years of torrential rains created great oceans, and swirling in the waters of the oceans is a bubbling broth of complex chemicals. Progress from a complex chemical soup to a living organism is very slow. This is exactly what the public schools are teaching, and they're teaching little children that their great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was soup. Now, evolutionists, you want to believe that? I don't really care what you want to believe, okay? You can believe in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, evolution. I don't care what you want to believe in, okay? But that is faith. That is not science. This textbook says the first self-replicating systems must have emerged in this organic soup. What do you mean, must have emerged? What's the logic there? Well, we're here, so we must have come from soup. That is the only logic in this textbook. The first cell comes from soup, and the soup comes from rocks. Ultimately, the evolutionists believe they come from a rock 4.6 billion years ago, and I admire their extraordinary faith to believe in such a thing. I just don't have enough faith to believe that. Now, the fifth definition is macroevolution, which is coming down to common ancestry. This is a chart showing different varieties of dogs, and some scientists have estimated there's roughly 250 varieties of dogs in the world today, depending on how you count them. But it's still a dog. Okay? This is not macroevolution of common ancestry. You can get a little dog like this one down here, a little Chihuahua, and a big dog like a Great Dane. But they're still dogs, and they're interfertile. There's some mechanical problems in trying to accomplish that, but it can be done. Okay? But Charles Darwin, as many evolutionists today, he thought that the birds and the bananas are related. Now some of you think, well, wait, he didn't actually say that, did he? He most certainly did on page 170 in his book. He said it is a truly wonderful fact that all animals, that's birds, and all plants, that's bananas, throughout all time and space should be related to each other. He just said the birds and the bananas are related, and that is what evolutionists believe. Now, this is a test I've given to 5-year-olds when we go to different churches. I said, there's a picture of a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is not like the others? They get it every time. It's the banana, okay? But we have college professors that can't seem to figure this out. See, Charles Darwin wrote a book called The Origin of Species, where he never actually addressed the origin of species, by the way. But the argument is actually, where are the kinds? Genesis chapter 1, God said the herb-yielding seed comes after his kind, grass after his kind, tree-yielding fruit after his kind, living creature after his kind, cattle after his kind, creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. 10 times in Genesis chapter 1 alone, God said they bring forth after their kind. So when they're arguing about a species is a very nebulous term, meaning it's vague, it's undefined. They really don't know what it means, and we'll cover that more when we get to Seminar 4. But the Bible is talking about where do the different kinds come from. Now this last one, microevolution, that's simply a variation within the kinds, okay? I don't like the term microevolution, but they use it, so I'll explain what it means. It just means a variety, just like we saw the different varieties of dogs. You get some with straight hair, and some with short hair, and some with long hair, and some with curly hair. I mean, you get different varieties of dogs, but it's still a dog. It did not change into a hamster, a whale, or a tomato. Now, you're going to find millions, billions, trillions of examples of variations between different kinds of animals and different kinds of plants. That is science. I don't know any Christians that have any argument with this one. But the problem is that the evolutionists will give you millions of examples of this one and then say, see, that proves the whole theory. No, it doesn't. These first 5 are religious. You have to believe in them. They will give you 0 examples of this in nature. They'll give you millions of examples of this. And this is the limit right here, because the Bible says they're only going to bring forth after their kind. You can't breed wings onto a horse. Okay? Now, in Proverbs chapter 6, it says, these 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. He says, a lying tongue, and then later he says, a false witness that speaketh lies. So of the 7 things that God hates, 2 of them are liars. God really hates lies, okay? And lies are very much like rat poison. Rat poison is actually 99.995% good food. There's just a tiny little bit of poison mixed in, and that's what kills the rat. But it's mostly good food. That's why rats like it. It tastes good to them. See, lies are like that rat poison because the more truth a lie contains, the more believable the lie becomes. But it only takes a little bit of lie to destroy you. Okay? Now, this is an image you'd see in a magazine somewhere. Marlboro cigarettes and cowboys. What does smoking Marlboro have to do with cowboys? Think about this for a moment. Do all cowboys smoke Marlboro? No. Are you required to smoke Marlboro to be a cowboy? No. If you start smoking Marlboro, do you become a cowboy just automatically? No. You might smell like a horse, but you're not a cowboy. And the Bible says, and this is a great verse for if you have Christian friends that still smoke, in 2 Corinthians 7 it says, having therefore these promises, dearly beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh. You don't need it, put it down. There's no reason to poison your body. Your body is supposed to be a temple of the Holy Spirit, so let's keep it clean. But let's have some truth in the advertising for these cigarettes. We could call them cancerettes, or breath rotters, bypasses, malignants, money suckers, or phlegm balls. Because that would be a little bit more truth. But if we advertised them like this, they wouldn't sell as well. And, it's all about the money. 1 Timothy 6:10, the love of money being the root of all evil. What does beer have to do with sports? During the Super Bowl time, you're going to see this, Bud Bowl, this advertisement they put on where they're putting these helmet heads on tops of beer bottles. If you have a football player, which they pay them something outrageous, like $20,000 an hour to be out there playing with football, right? Do you want this guy full of beer when he's out there, when you have your quarterback out there trying to throw a ball, you want him full of beer? No, of course not. Okay, so what does beer have to do with football? Well, nothing. And the Bible says, who hath woe, who hath sorrow, who hath contentions, who hath babbling, who hath wounds without cause, who hath redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine. Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor to drink. There's an awful lot in the Bible that says, don't look at that stuff, don't touch that stuff, just stay away from it, okay? Do not take the wine when it's fermented. Now, I took a few sips of some alcoholic drinks when I was younger. I've never liked it. I think it's bitter and disgusting, and I refuse it when I'm offered today on the basis of the Bible, okay? And some people are like, well, I just have 1 or 2, I can handle it, it's no big deal. Well, that's what everyone says. Take any alcoholic you've ever heard of, and when they were a teenager, do you think they just said, well, golly, I think I'm going to grow up and be a drunk? No one's ever said that, okay? It always starts with, well, just 1 or 2, I can handle it. That's the way it always begins. But I still have some people occasionally come up to me and say, but Chris, how do you know you won't like it if you don't try it? Well, that's brilliant. Have you ever laid your head under a semi-truck? Well, how do you know you won't like it if you don't try it? Folks, if you live your life by that philosophy, you're going to be dead pretty quick. All right, now, just because you have cigarettes mixed in with cowboys does not mean they go together. Just because you have beer mixed in with football doesn't mean they go together. And just because you have evolution mixed into some public school textbooks doesn't mean they belong in the science class, okay? Evolution is a religion, it's not part of science. Now, this textbook is teaching, again, this is one we looked at earlier, teaching the Big Bang. It says, all the matter and energy in the universe was concentrated into one single place. Remember, we read about this earlier. It said this place, of course, was extremely hot and dense. Then some 15 to 20 billion years ago, an explosion. The Big Bang shocked the concentrated matter and energy in all directions. That's what they teach. Then this textbook says, after many billions of years, all the matter and energy will once again be packed into a small area. What? It continues and says, this area may be no larger than the period at the end of this sentence. Then another Big Bang will occur. How could they possibly know that? No one could possibly know that. This is not science. This is imagination fairy tale stuff. But that's what the textbooks are teaching. It says, then another Big Bang will occur. The formation of the universe will begin all over again. A Big Bang may occur every 80 to 100 billion years. This one is not just saying it's going to happen again. It says it's been happening over and over forever. Are you kidding? This is what we're paying for in the public schools, folks. This is what your property taxes is going towards. Now, this is the European Space Agency for kids, by the way. Again, here's that term. Most astronomers believe, because they believe it, kids, you should believe it too. They believe this fairy tale, you should believe in that fairy tale too. They said time, space, and matter all began with the Big Bang. Now wait a second, I thought all the matter was concentrated into a dot. How is this saying that all matter began with the Big Bang? Because what about the dot? Well, this textbook author is really brilliant, because he says the following. He says, nothing really means nothing. That is how smart you got to be to write a book. Remember that, folks. Not only matter and energy would disappear, but also space and time. However, physicists theorize that from this state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion called the Big Bang. Did he just say nothing exploded? You heard that right. Discover magazine says the same thing. It says, where did everything come from? See, the question I'm having is, where's the first law of thermodynamics in all this? Because it states that matter cannot be created or destroyed. In order to have this theory that they're really pushing, they've got to throw out the laws of physics. So this, the Discover magazine, the front of this says, the universe burst into something from absolutely nothing. Zero. Nada. And as it got bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere. How is that possible? Ask Alan Guth. His theory of inflation helps explain everything. All right, let's check out what Alan Guth said in Scientific American. He said the observable universe could have evolved from an infinitesimal region. In the Greek, that's the dot. Okay? It's then tempting to go one step further and speculate that the entire universe evolved from literally nothing. So they start off saying, hey, maybe we came from a monkey. Ooh, maybe we came from a fish. Maybe we came from soup. Wait a second, maybe we came from a rock. Oh, no. Wait, maybe we came from a dot. Whoa, maybe we came from nothing. You see, folks, it's a slippery slope down a stupid mountain, and if you're not careful, you're going to hit every dumb stick on the way down. See, the Bible says, Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoid profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called. And folks, what I just read to you is science, falsely so called. That does not belong in our science textbooks or in our classrooms. Now, this is another reason why I don't like taking the newspaper. Okay, I used to live in Columbus, Ohio for a while, and I had a guy call up. He said, would you like to take the Columbus Dispatch? I said, no, sir, I don't have a hamster. But this article is saying, religious and scientific leaders debate evolution. Oh, no, come on, that's a bunch of humanist propaganda. This is not scientific leaders. This is two religions at war with each other. That's why this debate never ends. This is religion versus religion about evolution. Now this is from Astronomy Now, an article on their website, where they were talking about the Hubble image of this galaxy, and they said it indicates the universe was born spinning. And there's a reason they need this, okay? If the galaxies tend to spin in a certain direction, it means that the overall universe has a large net angular momentum. What does that mean, okay? Well, let's explain this in English. We're going to start off and say that you have this dot, and the dot's spinning faster and faster, and everything explodes, Big Bang, okay? Well, let's check out an experiment we can do on a merry-go-round and find out exactly what this is talking about, because I think these evolutionists can learn some amazing science if they have a merry-go-round. Now, we're going to get some kids onto the merry-go-round, and we're going to get some big football players to start pushing this thing faster and faster. So in phase 1, we're about 15 miles an hour. They're yelling, go faster, go faster. And then we'll enter phase 2, where they're no longer yelling to go faster. They're quietly hanging on for dear life, okay? Just concentrating. And then phase 3, they're up to 60 miles an hour, and now they're saying, stop, slow down, don't go any faster. Nope, we're going to continue this experiment and enter into phase 4 about 100 miles an hour where the children begin to fly off of the merry-go-round. Now at this point, you're going to notice a very interesting phenomenon of science. If the merry-go-round is spinning clockwise, the children will also spin clockwise as they fly off the merry-go-round until they meet resistance like a tree or a telephone pole. This is something in science we call the law of conservation of angular momentum. That's why when the article earlier said angular momentum, this is what they're talking about. You know, if a planet's spinning in a direction, you have this little ball or this little dot that they're claiming spinning in a direction. Everything that flies off of it, if it explodes, it's all going to be spinning in the same direction. So the problem they have, though, is some entire galaxies that they're looking at are spinning in opposite directions. This is a CNN article that says goofy galaxy spins in wrong direction. It's not what they expected. You see, because everybody thought that this little dot of nothing was spinning faster and faster and exploded, and that's why everything's spinning. But they find out they're spinning in opposite directions, and that explains nothing. You see, the solar system we have is described in the exact same way. They said that there was this big cloud of dust, and it all shrunk into itself, and then spun and made this disk, and poof, we had our sun and got planets. That's what they believe. That's exactly what this is teaching. As this cloud collapsed under gravity, it spun faster and faster until the rotation caused the cloud to flatten into a disk. Then the remains of the rotating disk started clumping together to form 9 planets of the solar system and their satellites, or their moons is what he's referring to. That's what's being taught, okay, by the evolutionists. This article this is Cambridge University Press. I had to double check on that. It says, as the core collapses, it tends to conserve its angular momentum. That means everything should be spinning in the same direction because it initially was spinning. It says the orbital velocities of the present-day planets are associated with angular momentum. What does that mean in English? That means all the planets are spinning the same direction today because the solar system had to start off spinning. That's why all the orbits are the same and all the planets are the same, but we have planets that spin backwards to each other. Why is it that Venus and Earth spin in opposite directions then? Did you know Uranus spins on its side, 90 degrees over? Why would that be? That's not explained by their theories, folks. But they continue to talk about this, and this is from an evolutionist who wrote an article on this in, was it 2009? This is from physicsoftheuniverse.com. This is on their fact page, by the way. They said because the sun and the planets all formed from the same spinning nebular cloud, that's what I was talking about, they said this is also why they all rotate in the same direction. Folks, these folks are willing to lie to children to get them to believe this. It is not true that they all rotate in the same direction. Okay? 20th century research has also shown us that nearly a third of all known planetary moons rotate in opposite directions. Some are orbiting in opposite directions. That is not explained by the evolutionary model. So why do we have some galaxies and planets and moons that spin backwards to each other? Well, I do have a theory about this, and I'd like to share my theory with you. Okay? I believe that about 6,000 years ago, God created everything, and God did it that way on purpose just to make the Big Bang model look stupid. And if my theory be true, then it worked. The Big Bang model looks pretty stupid. Now, the Big Bang was first thought of in 1927. Then later in 1948, somebody made a model for it. But the reason it got the name Big Bang, and this is something you Christians should remember, Fred Hoyle accidentally coined today's well-known phrase of the Big Bang, intending to belittle it over the radio. He said, this model is so dumb, I'm going to call it the Big Bang, and he did that to make fun of it, because it was so stupid. And today, they hung on to it, like, oh, okay, we're going to call it that. It was the Big Bang. You should laugh every time you hear that, because it's making fun of a stupid model. So we covered the first law of thermodynamics. It violates matter cannot be created or destroyed, but this also violates the known second laws of thermodynamics. Now, there is, those of you who might be familiar with some of the conversations that are going on between evolutionists and creationists will know that this is something that evolutionists argue about and object to every time a Christian like me talks about the second law of thermodynamics. They get all up in arms and they're like, that's not what it means. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you from Isaac Asimov, who is one of the major poster boys for evolution. This is a man that most of them highly respect and they won't argue with him. I'm going to quote exactly what this evolutionist and professor of biochemistry said in his book. He said, we can see the second law all about us. We have to work hard to straighten a room, but left to itself it becomes a mess again very quickly and very easily. Even if we never enter it, it becomes dusty and musty. How difficult to maintain houses and machinery and our bodies in perfect working order. How easy to let them deteriorate. In fact, all we have to do is nothing, and everything deteriorates, collapses, breaks down, and wears out all by itself. And that is what the second law is all about. Well, that's easy enough to remember. I mean, the Bible even describes this, guys. In Hebrews chapter 1, it says, the earth, the heavens, they shall perish. They wax old as doth a garment. The Bible confirms that the second law of thermodynamics is all around us. That's why 95% of the people in this world are employed. I mean, when you wake up in the morning, do you notice that everything just orders and straightens itself automatically? No, you have to get up and clean your room and straighten your hair and, fix your clothes and, wash yourself, and all that stuff has to be done. Well, why? Because of the second law of thermodynamics. Everything's falling apart. And I've often wondered why some women will have to work an hour of hard work in the morning to look natural. If you want to look natural, just get out of bed and go. That is natural right there. See, this is Sue at 20 years old. Here she is at 90, and here she is at 3,000. Everything is falling apart. It's waxing old as doth the garment, the Bible says. Now, evolutionists assume that if you add energy to an open system, it's going to overcome the second law of thermodynamics. That means things will stop breaking down if you just put some energy on it. Well, number one, the universe is a closed system, first of all. We had some articles that I quoted from earlier that stated that the universe is closed. Even the evolutionists know that it's a closed system, okay? And we don't have a lot of time to talk about that today, but a closed system, that's if you're taking energy from the outside. So, example, your body is a closed system. You have to take energy in, and if you stop taking energy in, you will eventually break down and wear out, okay? But number two, adding energy is destructive without a complex mechanism to harness the energy. What do I mean by that? Well, if you've ever been to the gas station to fill up your gas tank, okay, what you can do is run a little experiment. Instead of filling up your gas tank, fill up the front seat of your car with gasoline, okay, pump it as high as it'll go. You have a bunch of gasoline, light a match, and set it on fire. Will your car run faster? No. I say, why not? You say, well, Chris, you have to have a complex mechanism to harness that energy and use it, like an internal combustion engine. Exactly my point, okay? It depends on what is harnessing the energy, okay? Not about the energy itself, because energy is generally destructive. The Japanese added a whole bunch of energy to Pearl Harbor in 1941. They didn't organize anything. And we turned around a few years later, we added a bunch of energy to their cities. We didn't organize anything over there either. Okay, the cleanup is still going on in a lot of places where these bombs have gone off. I mean, the sun's energy will destroy the roof on your house. It's going to destroy the entire house. The sun's energy will destroy the roof of your car. It's going to destroy the paint job on your car. It'll destroy everything. There's only one molecule in the entire plant that can use the sun's and harness the sun's energy naturally and use it, which is a tiny little leaf cell called chlorophyll in plants. It's the only naturally occurring thing that can harness the sun's energy and use it. Okay, and one leaf cell is far more complex than an entire city. It's amazing in massive complexity. But the evolution theory teaches the exact opposite. They said if you just leave things alone, they'll get bigger and better and stronger and smarter. You see, this textbook says humans probably evolved from bacteria that lived more than 4 billion years ago. That's what they're teaching, the exact opposite of the second law of thermodynamics. Now, I was talking with an evolutionist one time at a social function. I sat down with her and I was talking with her, and she said she believed in evolution. And I pulled out my cell phone, like it's showing here, and I said, would you consider this a complex mechanism? And she said, well, she's a little scared. I said, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just asking for your opinion. Do you believe this is a complex mechanism? I said, it's got a light board, it's got circuitry, it's got printed circuitry. And she said, yeah, I would consider that a complex mechanism. I said, okay, do you believe, given millions or billions of years, that this could evolve itself out of the mud on its own? She said, yes. And I put it away. I mean, most people laugh when I say that. I said, I put it away. I didn't laugh at her. I just said, I admire you for your extraordinary faith to believe such a thing. I just don't have the faith to believe that. And the look she gave me was like a cow at an oncoming train, It's like this deer in headlights kind of look, like a thought just hit her brain. It's like, oh man, I do have faith in this. Of course, she didn't want to talk about it anymore after that. But this is the kind of stuff they believe, folks. They believe these things are possible. You have things like Mount Rushmore. the evolutionists will not believe that on Mount Rushmore, the faces on Mount Rushmore could have evolved onto Mount Rushmore naturally by just occurring winds. They don't believe that. But they believe the real George Washington could evolve by random chance. That makes no sense. You see, if the frog turns into the man quickly, the princess kisses the frog, it turns into the prince, we call that a fairy tale. But if the frog turns into the man slowly, and you add in the secret ingredient of billions of years, then it becomes science? That's not science, it's still a fairy tale. It's just a fairy tale for grown-ups. So this is the end of part 1. And you want to join us next time, we're going to discuss why the age of the earth is important, and is the age of the earth part of New Testament gospel? Does the Bible conflict with the evolutionists' billions of years? And can a person be saved, a saved Christian, and still believe in evolution? Well, you'll want to join us for part 2 because we're going to discuss all that in the next session.